Okay, so today we are going through my January wrap, discussing all the books that I read in January. Before I do, I just want to take a moment to kind of explain why you haven't seen a lot of videos from me lately. There's just been a lot of things going on, guys, so I do apologize about that. For me, you're seeing this January wrap incredibly late. For others, they do their monthly wraps incredibly late anyway, but I don't, so I do apologize about that. But anyway, let's get right into it. I have some stats. Let's put them on the screen right now. So in the month of January, I read 10 books comprising of 7 fantasies, 2 contemporaries, and 1 classic. To my age groups, I read 6 YA and 4 adult books. For my lengths, I read 4 tomes, 5 half tomes, and 1 novella, totaling 4,512 pages. To my star ratings, I had 6 5-stars, 2 4-stars, 1 3-star, and 1 2-star. Alright, so we are going to start off with a reread for me, Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So I had, and I need to make that point here again, I had a series called You Choose My TBR, where we went back a year or so in time to see the books that I'd read then, and you guys were given the opportunity to vote for books for me to reread. I don't do that anymore. This is the book that came up for me to reread in December, and I love this book. It made it to my favourite book, like #1 of 2020, and I had a blast rereading this book. Rereading it was a very enjoyable experience because when you read it the first time, you're kind of going along with the flow. You don't really know what's going on and you're waiting to see because you don't know what's around the corner. But rereading it and knowing everything that's going to happen, oh my gosh, Brandon Sanderson, his foreshadowing was just absolutely incredible. I had a lot of fun with this book and I ended up giving it 5 stars. I do highly recommend Mistborn Era 1 and Brandon Sanderson in general for anyone who's a fan of fantasy. Most of the books that I'm showing you guys in this monthly wrap I have done a mini review for, so you can check out those other videos I did in January if you want a little more information. Some of them are spoiler free and spoiler, and some of them are just spoiler free. Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. This is a YA contemporary, and on the whole, I enjoyed this book, but I went into this book having already seen The Princess Diaries and The Princess Diaries 2, the films. I have an absolute love and respect for Julie Andrews, so anything that she's in, I'm going to watch. And I also love Anne Hathaway, so that worked out well. But I never read the original source material. I do have to say very quickly that in my opinion, if I'm having the two, comparing the two, the films did it better, in my opinion. So the basic premise of this book is that we are following a girl whose name is Mia, who doesn't want to be noticed by anyone. She just wants to basically be a shadow that no one sees. She's going through high school, and one day she comes to find out that there is more to her than meets the eye. Her father is a king? Yes, her father's a king, and she comes to find out she's a princess because he eventually finally tells her this, and she now needs to take princess lessons with her grandmother to prepare herself to take the throne one day. I gave this book 4 stars. Pretty much since February of 2020, with the exception of only 1 month, every other month I read 1 book to do with the Cosmere universe for Brandon Sanderson, and I absolutely love them. In January, I went back to the very first book in the series, and that is Elantris. So, first time read for me, and overall, I really loved this book. There were a few issues that I did have with it. It took me a little while to get into the story because, to me, this book has the slowest pacing of all the Cosmere books I've read so far. And for those of you who know about the Cosmere universe, I've read Mistborn Era 1, Mistborn Era 2, Warbreaker, and the first 3 books in the Stormlight Archives. A lot of people say Well of Ascension is really slow, but this is much slower than that. But this is also Brandon Sanderson's first Cosmere book, so you kind of, have to give that allowance. We have a prince, and we have a princess that we're following as well. It's not exactly a multi-perspective, it's more omniscient narration, but their 2 stories are the main ones that we're following. And yeah, for what it was, I enjoyed this book. I gave this book 4 stars. I did think it was good, and my dear, dear Brando Sando is yet to let me down. Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This book is just incredible. I have, well, in 2020, I read 125 books and I had 125 completely different experiences with those books. But what this one has that none of those had was this book just took me here, there, and everywhere, round the twist, round the bend. I ended up becoming as mad as the Mad Hatter by the time we got to the climax of this book, but in such a good way. It just drew me in. The basic premise of this book is that we are following 2 sisters. Well, we're following 1 sister, but at the beginning we're following 2 sisters who are being raised by their dad, who is an absolute tyrant. He has incredibly harsh rules that he sets for his daughters, and if either of them step out of line, the line is just impossible not to cross because he's incredibly harsh. But if either of them step out of line, he punishes the other one. One of the sisters is writing to the Caraval master. Caraval is not quite a carnival, not quite a circus, has a lot of magic in it, and there is a game involved that within Caraval that involves a ton of clues and finding some sort of a thing, and whoever solves all the clues and finds the thing first is the winner. So already you've got me excited, because anything with clues and trying to find something, yeah, you've already got me happy. He does respond, saying, we're not going to be in your area, but we are going to be on a neighbouring island, and we would love it if you could come along. Please find 3 tickets enclosed in this letter, 1 for you, your sister, and your fiancé. And oh my goodness, the game is so amazing that for the first time in Mr. Fancy Reads TBR history, I actually broke my TBR. Once I got to the end of this book, I put through an emergency order for book number 2 and planned to continue on with my TBR, but the moment that book number 2 arrived, I was going to get on to reading that. So not surprisingly, 5 stars for Caraval. Absolutely loved this book, and so much love and respect for Stephanie Garber for what she put me through in this book. First classic for 2021, and that was Gaston Leroux's The Phantom of the Opera. This was an incredible read. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. So a little bit of backstory. I actually grew up listening to the music of The Phantom of the Opera without ever having read the original source material, the music, seeing the musical or seeing the film. I came to find out post reading the book that the book has one genre, and then Andrew Lloyd Webber purchased the rights to the musical, and he kind of made it another genre. So originally, when The Phantom of the Opera was published, prior to it just now becoming known as a classic, it was originally published as a horror. Andrew Lloyd Webber, with his musical, turned it into a romance. The basic premise that I can give you of this book, it is rather short, is that we are following, we open up with 2 men who have purchased an opera house in Paris at an auction, and within the first week of being there, they receive a letter from someone who is labeling themselves as an OG. This OG is requesting that they continue to pay them a salary with which they've come accustomed to receiving, and that box seats number 5 continues to remain unsold so that they have reserved seating for any performance that they want to see. The 2 new owners go around the theatre and ask everyone about this OG, and they come to find out that there is a legend of an opera ghost that lives in the opera house, and these 2 men just kind of fob it off and say, yeah, no. If anything, we will go into box 5. We will definitely be selling box 5. We're not giving this opera ghost any money at all. And the more you work your way through the book, the more, as a reader, you can't help but question, is there an opera house ghost or isn't there? The reveal is incredibly amazing. The horror elements are so well done. 5 stars, and safe to say that I'm just loving my classics at the moment. It was book 2 in the Caraval series. It arrived and I was ready to dive right in. It's called Legendary. Okay, so Book one, we go through this whole game. I absolutely loved it, and I went just mad as the Mad Hatter. I needed to read Legend. It wasn't a want, it was a need. I need more, and I need it now. What happened in this book, and with me, was that I ended up being completely let down with book number two, and I was just shattered by it, really. So in book two, there is a game that is played, but the game is very much a side plot. It is not the main focus, and I found myself a lot of the time saying, when are we getting back to the game? We're involved in a game. Why aren't we focusing on the game? This is just annoying me. But also, someone that I was watching do a review of Legendary made, after I'd read it, made a really interesting point, and I completely agree with them. Book one, Caraval, is very much a plot-driven book. Book two, Legendary, is a character-driven book. I don't personally understand why Stephanie Garber would do that, why she would have the first book be plot-driven and then break that mold and have a character-driven book for book two. But on top of that, I'm not a character-driven reader. This book received the lowest rating of the month of January, 2 stars, and I will not be continuing on with finales. Shadowhunters, City of Bones, book one in the Shadowhunter series by Cassandra Clare. So I purchased this book with for one reason, and one reason only. Cassandra Clare as an author is extremely polarizing. I hadn't ever come across an author that is such a polarizing author. So what does that do for Mr. Fancy? It intrigues me to the point that I want to purchase this book and see where I land. Do I love this book? Do I end up in the middle, or do I end up hating it with all those who are hating this book? And I don't know whether you're going to agree with me or not, but oh my gosh, I'm an absolute lover of this book. One, we have almost like 3 major events that occur one after the other throughout this book. I love that. Most of the time with fantasy, it's one major event. So yeah, like triple the amount. I enjoyed that. And secondly, the epilogue in this book was the single best epilogue I've ever read in my life. Cassandra Clare did exactly what I've wanted with every book that I've wished there was an epilogue in, or I wished had gone further with their epilogue. Cassandra Clare leaves you satisfied when you come to the end of this book, because once the climax has happened, Cassandra Clare goes into her epilogue and visits with every single character that is still around, and checks in with them somehow so that we know exactly what's going on with each and every single one of them that is still going. And it was just incredible that I did my second emergency order of the month and for my entire BookTube career by purchasing book number 2 right away, because I needed to read more. Not surprisingly, the next book that I read in January was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, book 2 in the Shadowhunter series. This book arrived, so I finished this book and ordered this book and received it within about 12 to 14 hours after I'd finished this book. So it was perfect. I could just go straight into this one. And once again, I absolutely loved this book, and I did give it 5 stars. There was less action than was in this book, and the book is shorter. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, by comparison, it is shorter. So there's kind of 1 or 2 storylines that we're dealing with as opposed to the 3 that we have in this one. But in saying that, I still found it extremely captivating. Once again, we had an amazing epilogue in this book also. And book number 3, I purchased right away. I tried to, get through the rest of my TBR, but book number 3 is on my February TBR. I think I'm just regretting the fact that I hadn't picked them up until now. 5 stars for City of Ashes, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the book that made me realize I'm not ready to reread. I have so many new books that I want to read, and this is what kind of made me cancel my YouTube, my TBR. I love The Well of Ascension. I love Mistborn Era 1. It was my favorite series of 2020, but it just made me realize that I'm not in the mood to reread something I've already read when I have so many other books that I haven't read, and I'm just so excited to get to them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, and also it's a sequel, so there's not a lot I can say other than we continue on with the series of Era 1 of Mistborn. Brandon Sanderson is an amazing writer. This book is slower paced than The Final Empire, though faster paced than Elantris. and I gave it 5 stars. I still love it to this day. The buddy read that I was doing between myself and my mother, I don't have an official buddy read anymore because I cancelled that, but the book that I read with my mum was this book, Love Clancy, by Richard Glover. This is an absolutely beautiful book, at least to begin with. It is a YA contemporary, is what I'm going to call it, and we follow Clancy, who starts off as a puppy kelpie, and he is writing letters home to his mum and his dad, and it is as adorable as you would think it would be. I mean, all these letters he's writing through the eyes of a dog. You know, I'm living with the humans, and they don't realize this, but at the same time, I've come up with a new game, which is this, and oh my gosh, it is all the feels. It is so much fun. I really enjoyed myself. Then it got to a certain point, I think about the halfway mark, where what I was enjoying about the first half kind of started becoming a little bit too monotonous for me. You don't know specifically what you're going to get from Clancy, but by the time you get to the halfway mark, you know, it just feels rather formulaic, and you feel like you know the formula of the letters. And yeah, it just kind of gets a bit old really quickly as of the second half. In saying that, I think all in all, it's a book that dog lovers need to read, rather than saying, I think you'll love it and it'll be fun. It's a must read for dog lovers, because even though it is fiction, it will help you to realize things by looking through the eyes of a dog. I end up giving this book 3 stars because it's not a book that I hate, and it's not a book that I love. It just kind of fell in the middle for me. So that is where I am going to leave it. These are the books that I read in the month of January. Have you read any of these books? And if so, what did you think of them? Let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, that is where I'm going to leave it, letting you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. I'm not going to say when I post videos, because with what happened last week, I don't want to put up a schedule in case I disappoint anyone, but I'll do my best to get another video out to you guys very, very soon. And if you've not seen my February TBR video, feel free to check that out. And if you want to buddy read any of those books with me, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, mwah, and happy reading!